Well, the proposal is just being unveiled now as we speak. It's essentially an effort to make sure that all 27 countries are using the same information so that they can recognize each other's passports in time for the summer. Now, the Commission is keen not to use the phrase vaccine passports here. They're calling these green digital certificates. We're getting some information about what they'll look like. This is what they're envisioning here is something that can be on your smartphone. It will be in your national language and in English, and it will contain the same standardized information. But we're already seeing some answers here to some of the big questions that we've had about this so-called vaccine passport. One is that the Commission has said that vaccines that have not been approved by the EU Medicines Agency, such as Russia's vaccine Sputnik, will not be eligible for this pass. That means people who have received the Sputnik vaccine in Hungary, which is the only EU country that has approved it, cannot get this pass. But individual countries could choose to let those people in. It just wouldn't be eligible for this pass. Essentially, this is going to be a trade-off. The Commission is saying this is part of an overall strategy to reopen Europe in the summer. And so countries, it's expected, should no longer have travel bans with other EU countries. And if they want to restrict movement, they would need to use this digital pass. The regulation that's being proposed here would require them, if they are requiring such proof for entry, they need to use this pass. In other words, they cannot have different requirements than this pass. This pass needs to be enough to get an EU citizen into another EU country. The pass will contain 3 vital pieces of information: whether they have been vaccinated and when, with which vaccine, whether they have had a negative COVID test result in the past days, and whether or not they have already had COVID and therefore possibly have antibodies. Now, it appears what the Commission is suggesting here is that any of those 3 should allow an EU citizen to get into an EU country. But we're going to wait for some clarification on that from the press conference. But the Commission's big emphasis here is that this is not an effort to restrict travel. This is an effort to open travel. It's supposed to allow member states to end their travel bans, at least within the EU, because everyone will have this one trusted certificate that is not forgeable, that everyone can have faith in, and that everyone can read.
Okay, it sounds great, Dave, but given how slow the vaccination drive has gone within the bloc, will we even get to use this green digital pass by the summer?
That's the elephant in the room here. I mean, really, you would have to have, it seems like at least half of people vaccinated to have these passports go into effect. Otherwise, the system doesn't really work. And obviously, the EU is nowhere close to that. Now, this is legislation that will take some time to pass. It will have to pass here in the European Parliament and also across the streets in the European Council, that is the 27 national governments. To say regulations like this normally do not get passed in 3 months, so it would have to be really rushed through in order to be ready for the start of the summer in June. But then the other question is, will enough people be vaccinated by that point to make this certificate worthwhile? It could be that they do go ahead and adopt this certificate, but then in the end, no country decides to use it because the logistics are too complicated or Europe isn't far enough along in its vaccination process to actually require these. Don't forget, last year at this time, the Commission was urged by national governments to come up with one interface that all of the digital track and trace apps could run on so that they would be interoperable with each other in Europe. Those track and trace apps really haven't been used by EU countries. It's been pretty much abandoned by almost all EU countries. People are using them, but in very small amounts. And so it could be that this is yet another digital tool that was all the rage for a little while, and then national governments kind of forget about it. They decide it's not worth it or too complicated. We'll have to see. This basically just sets how these digital certificates could work in the summer. It is not a guarantee that we will actually be in a situation in the summer that these certificates are being used either for travel or for leisure, and it could be that we never see these digital certificates used here in Europe.
Okay, great. It sounds good in theory. Dave, thank you very much for that. Dave Keating reporting there from Brussels.